Table call. Today's topic is the United Kingdom and the Transatlantic Economy. Robert Atkinson of Mirai Asset Securities, the moderator for this talk. I am very pleased to be joined by Edward Price, Head of Finance Sector and Economic Policy, North America for the United Kingdom Department of International Trade. He represents Her Majesty's government in the United States out of the British Consulate General's office here in New York City. I just want to remind everyone up front that our meetings today are entirely off the record, as Ed is serving a serving official in the UK government. We'll say a few words about Ed's background. Prior to consular service, Ed took senior advisory roles in the European Parliament and the Commons. As a result, he has firsthand experience of European and British policymaking and how both interact with the United States. And of course, B.J. Belloc and myself can speak firsthand to Ed's affinity with these issues, having spent some time with Ed before and seen him speak. Ed was educated at the London School of Economics. He holds 2 master's degrees, one in finance and economic policy and the other in German history. He has published various peer-reviewed articles and press articles on the global economy and teaches courses at New York University's International Political Economy program. So again, we are very pleased to have Ed join us. Before I introduce Ed, I do want to call everyone's attention and bring a slide, please. Back then, I want to say thank you to our sponsors. Terrific. So, before we do introduce Ed, I want to say thank you to our sponsors, with whose support none of this would be possible. And of course, sponsors include Alston Bird, Baker, Bloomberg, Deloitte, Granton, New Capital, Kaya, and more recently, the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg Trade and Investment Office here in New York. So we're delighted to have our sponsors support us. And so, Ed, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Bob.
And Ed, let me ask you something. You have a very interesting and varied background. Is there anything that you'd like to add to my description of it?
No, that's right. It already sounds ridiculous and implausible enough.
Yes.
So,
but it's true. It's all true.
It's all true. And I think it was an accident, if I'm being honest. It was very sort of eclectic interests that have sort of come together.
So let me ask you this. We're, among other things, to talk about Brexit.
Indeed.
Okay. And obviously, Brexit has taken on a life of its own, maybe one that no one could have foreseen at the outset. Talk about Brexit from a big issue standpoint. And your approach is not so much geared around what's happening, but to think about these big issues like Brexit. So maybe spend a moment on that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Get people warmed up on this.
Yeah, sure thing. So my approach has always been a little bit more on the economic history side, a little bit more about structures. I'm very interested in the supply side. I'm very interested in how economic policy interacts and affects the aforementioned supply side. Seems like I spend a little bit less time gazing at cycles or market volatility. So I think yes, in that context, Brexit's interesting as well, just really academic.
And let's back to your background for a second and what you do for the Department of International Trade. What exactly does the head of economic and financial sector policy do all day? What's your day like?
It's a great question, Bob. Let me just look at my notes. Just kidding. Yeah.
The job description.
The job description. The Department for International Trade has a dual mandate. We want to ensure that UK exporters are landing in the US properly, and they're happy and they have a good sense of how to navigate this country's and economic policy framework, and vice versa. So we're going to talk to people in the US who are looking at investing in UK, making sure that they understand what we're doing, and making sure that they're happy. For me, I'm also, as I just said, I'm always interested in wrapping around the global economy as best I can, principally in the transatlantic space, just so that we've got a nice understanding of the big picture, as you say.
Sounds all well and good. And point, maybe talk about you that I think that might be on people's minds these days before we dive into Brexit, and that issue is MiFID. And I know we want to get into the weeds on this, but MiFID policy that impacts not only folks in Europe, but it has tangential consequences to managers here in the United States, unfortunately or unfortunately. Can you give us a little sense as to what's going on with MiFID now in side of the pond?
Sure. So, I mean, this MiFID comes up a lot, and I guess I should say I don't want to front run or double guess our regulators. So it's not my place to make pronouncements on this kind of thing. I guess the question I'm sometimes asked is when the UK diverge. I think that's probably what you're hinting at. Yes. Look, my answer to that is I'm going to front run the regulators. I'm not going to front run the regulation. We've been very, very clear from the start that we want things market function and size. So I think let's leave MiFID to one side, and for those who can comment on it, that's our position.
That's good. All fair. So let's dive into Brexit. What is there, Ed?
Want to leave the European Union tomorrow? I'm sure nothing you can't get off the BBC website. But yes, I mean the Prime Minister won his majority, 80 seats, and we've proceeded with legislation, and the EU side has proceeded to ratify. You saw the European Parliament, so we're going ahead and we're going to leave.
Again, I understand that you're a serving official in the government, but let's talk about that election, those election results. Surprising to many people in the UK, the extent to which the Prime Minister was returned?
I don't think it surprising. No, I think that the electorate decided what it decided, which is that it wanted a government that was going to enact Brexit, the Get Brexit Done slogan. So I don't think it's surprising. An 8-seat majority is, of course, impressive, if you look like that.
And when was the last time a party had an 8-seat majority or better, or thereabouts?
Thereabouts. You could probably look at the second Blair administration. I think that was somewhere around 60, 65, something like that.
I think people in the United States find that interesting for a number of reasons, perhaps one of them being that it could be a precursor of things to happen here in the U.S. Maybe, but I think it's interesting to watch these things. Mm-hmm. So, we're in the Brexit negotiation.
So, I mean, again, I'm not going to front negotiators. That's entirely a matter for the negotiating teams on both sides. If you look at what the Prime Minister said publicly, it's a very clear message. We want a deal with the EU, and we want to get it done by December 2020. That deal is going to be about maximising trade and maximising the relationship.
Okay, and I suppose that old expression, as one door closes, doors open. So again, given the restraint you have on commenting on certain matters, can you think of any new doors that might open as a result of this door closed, at least shut slightly, ever so slightly?
Well, your words, not mine. I don't look at global trade as a zero-sum game. I don't think that doors have to close in order for other doors to open. And I don't want to get Ricardian on you, but I think it's exactly a non-zero-sum game, right? The whole point of world trade. So I don't recognise any doors are closing. Everybody can get richer if they specialise and if they trade. So there you go. I'm a sort of trader. But if you're making reference to our ambition for an FTA with the United States, certainly that's something that we've also said we want to do.
Okay. So when you see Brexit impacting the transatlantic economy and social system in particular, because many of the folks that are that have done in this morning have a keen interest in the financial system. So,
right.
What is on that?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm not sure that I do see much impact. I mean, everybody on the call will know that the international financial system has been developing over decades. I mean, we don't want to go to 1973, but we've seen market forces take on a great share of what constitutes the size and ensuring the behavior of financial markets, right? FX is, 5 trillion plus a day, so policy did everything, right? Policy doesn't change everything. And we also saw, of course, a regulatory wave following the global financial crisis, focused on macroprudential regulation, which is on the books, and I should say is something that's very important to my jurisdiction, right? Which is our exposure to our financial center and the size of and depth of our financial center. Macroprudential regulation is something that's very important. So, I mean, it's a good question, but where you draw a straight line between our ambitions and what I think partners' ambitions are, we have to see the international financial system working well, which I think it is, and in essence allocating capital cross-border as per economic sense.
As I hear you speak, one thing pops in my mind, and that is that the London play in the future. I mean, obviously, London, the city of London, is a major world financial center. And my question is, do you see that changing? Do you see London perhaps, in the short run, being relegated to more of a regional role, without being the entree post, so to speak, to you anymore?
So the answer is absolutely not. I don't see that. And I would love you and your listeners to imagine that this London was created by very clever economic policy people, such as myself. It
yes.
was right. Yeah,
Yes.
I would love if your listeners could go away with that impression. That would be great. But it kind of wasn't. I mean, it was aided, as I say, in the 80s with the BIM, and there have been various other interventions in the UK's economic policy posture over the years that have and helped to deepen the financial centre of London. It's an historical, right? It's something that's taken hundreds of years.
The Romans founded it. It was a trading centre during Roman times.
So the Italians set it up for it, right?
Yes.
Grazie mille. But I guess there's a serious point there, which is I don't think you can get rid of the city of London. It's possible. So people say, can London survive? I think it's going to thrive, very much given the structural strength that we have. I mean, to starting them, I'm sure everybody knows, but we're slap bang in the middle of the world's
time zones. Exactly.
I mean, come on, like if you want to trade both ways, you don't have to get up at 2 a.m. That's for convenience.
Yes.
We've got the rule of law, not just law, common law. We're innovative. We have the FCA and the FCA sandbox. We're transparent. We have depth. We have liquidity. I don't think you can get rid of those things.
Oh, I would certainly agree with that. And let me just a little bit more about that, or probe further. It was as if the British government has been making several attempts to develop links with other major trading areas, such as China, for example. Thoughts on that? Do you see London? And if you combine that, your point about time zones, London really is uniquely positioned, isn't it, to be a platform?
I think so. I think so. Again, almost by accident, given where we are, and I'm going to get into what individual relationships we have with individual jurisdictions. But say there's something very organic about the City of London's composition and position that would make it, on the face of things, a very logical centre for handling savings gluts, assets, financial product into other jurisdictions. I don't, and as I say, I don't think this is easy to damage. I mean, we all know that liquidity tends to sort of flow in one place. People want an ecosystem. People want to know how things work. So London, I think, absolutely. The title of the talk is what is it? In the Transatlantic Economy, or the global economy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So, let's a little bit about the EU before we come back to transatlantic. What type of relationship do you envision with Europe, EU 27, forward?
Honestly, a very good one. I mean, personal opinion, a very good one. We've been clear that we have partnerships, economic and otherwise, that will, and if you listen to anything the EU said in public, that's exactly the same message. But again, if you want to be a bit more academic about it, there are strong signals that need each other. I mean, you think about the composition of the EU financial system and the UK financial system. You could probably say there's a strong demand for the efficient liquidity in the City of London in the economy in the EU 27, right? But don't take my word for it. We can go back to Markets Union 2014, actually an offer to the British to build out that functionality. So I think there's a very, very good relationship to be had.
Okay, and on that note, it sort of reminds me of, and I attended, I guess it was back in 2017, so it's almost 3 years ago.
Right,
3 years ago at the New York Alternative Investment Roundtable at the Penn Club. We were fortunate enough to have Christian Braun, who then and is still Luxembourg's ambassador to the United Nations, address us. And of course, Ambassador Braun, his perspective on things, and my takeaway was that agreement had been struck by two parties previously, and that for all intents and purposes, that agreement provides a picture as to how the two parties might disengage. And I'm trying to phrase this very diplomatically. I got the sense that there wasn't a great deal of give from their perspective, okay? And it was funny or coincidental, about a week later, I happened to be in London, and I was at dinner with Dr. Kay Swinburne, who at the time, when she represented Wales as a member of the EU Parliament, and while I think she was very disheartened about Brexit, she also viewed it as the glass being half full, not half empty, and she went on to explain why Europe needed Britain, and that wouldn't be so easy to get off. And some of the things she said really surprised me. One had to do with, I think, biotech research and pharmaceutical research. I wasn't knowledgeable about Britain's role in that sector. So I'm curious to get your reaction to that.
Well, my reaction is that Kay's a very smart woman, and I can't keep up with her. So I wouldn't feel bad about not knowing about the biotech side. Maybe I'm being simplistic here, Bob, but I think everybody needs everybody else, and that's the point of trade. And look at the role of the United Kingdom. We're offering, generically, innovation. We're offering liquidity. We're offering out-of-the-box thinking. So I don't see any reason that there isn't a very strong role and a growing role in the United Kingdom's influence, right? A good influence and pro-market stance and pro-business stance in the world and in EU 27.
So let's turn our focus now to the transatlantic world. This impacting the relationship with North America. I say North America as opposed to the United States because obviously North America encompasses the Dominion of Canada,
right.
And Mexico and the Caribbean, and destinations beyond. Yeah. What is your view on that?
I'm not going to draw a straight line between UK-EU and UK-US. I don't necessarily think that's linear. I think that what I can say is that we've been very clear that we want to improve and enhance the trading relationship with the US. But that's something we would be doing anyway, if that makes sense. I mean, we are sort of, our brand, if you like, is that we are pro-trade and pro-global trade. So, it might focus mind a little bit, but I think that what we want to do is see more trade. Financial sector, works very well already, but maybe there are some wins to be had.
So for people in the audience that might be about doing business in Britain, what tell them? How is doing business in Britain today, or easier was in the past, or is the case, in fact?
Well, doing business in the United Kingdom is already pretty easy. I mean, I can get into this or not as you should, but we at being a pro-business jurisdiction. Thank you. Bob's very kindly handing me some water for those of you that can't see, so he's a gentleman and a scholar. Look, it depends how you want to look at it. There's different ways of assessing a jurisdiction, right? If you I don't want to teach my grandmother to suck eggs. One of the ways is obviously, as you said, what's the ease of doing business, and I say that's strong. Another is what is the rule of law, and it's strong. But it's the state of the economy, right? I think that's another thing you want to think about before you start investing in a jurisdiction. You're also investing in an economy. The numbers are actually pretty healthy. I don't know if you want to get into that, but I think that's something.
Please do.
Yeah, okay. So I'm sure there are economists on the line, but we have a trade balance at a record surplus of $4 billion in November. Services, I mean, you look at the latest IHS PMIs, they're up from 49.3 in November to 50. Employment's at a 45-year low of 30%. I'm getting this out for everyone on the line who thinks I've got the best memory in world history. And look, there's some other indicators, and you don't need to take my word for it. I mean, one thing that I the other day was Joe Zedel from Blackstone. His outlook was, I think, 2% plus real-term GDP growth in 2020. Now, long-term average is something like 2. So if you get the media here and you read all the stories on Brexit and.
Well, one thing I do want to ask, and that last point prompted this thought in my head, was that say demographics are destiny, and if you are a country that is growing population-wise slowly or losing people, it puts pressure on GDP growth. Mm-hmm. And I do recall Dr. Winburn telling me that Brexit have a very harsh impact on immigration to the kingdom. And the United Kingdom, like the United States to a large degree, has been the beneficiary of immigrants. And many of these immigrants come to countries providing high value-added contributions. Mm-hmm. So it will continue to be the case in the United Kingdom. Will the United Kingdom continue to attract high value-added workers to the force?
The answer is absolutely yes. Now, first of all, just going back one step with my economics hat on, of course, a labour market of size is a good thing.
Yep.
And that's evident. But going back to the second point on skilled labour, absolutely yes. I mean, these are the people that we want. We've been very clear that highly skilled individuals coming into the country are a good thing. And if I'm being frank, I don't think that investment bankers from JP Morgan landing in Canary Wharf worked of that immigration narrative previously. So we've been very clear we want skilled people. We know we need them, and we're going to make sure that they're happy in the United Kingdom.
So the last comment, or the second to last comment, almost makes me think that that the United Kingdom would like to return to its early as an industrial nation that makes things, opposed to maybe, and forgive me for saying it this way, but pushing paper. Was once the world's workshop.
Well, I mean, we mentioned our roots earlier, and we established that we're basically a Roman colony. So we're not going we're not going back to our roots. Look, we've got an industrial strategy that's very good on the technology and the industry of the future. I don't think there's going to be a completely clear line between services and that new industrial revolution, right? So do we have ambitions to make things? Yeah, sure, and we do make things, by the way. We make a lot of good things. But I think it's more about how do you build on the strengths of the economy by diversifying it. Think, again, I don't want to sort of be too sick here, but I don't think there's a competition between a services sector and manufacturing, particularly not in the 21st century's world of AI and robotics and driverless cars and so on. I think there's another narrative on that kind of stuff, which is actually there's a lot of opportunity.
What sectors do you see thriving in the near term?
Well, let's go back to bread and butter. I mean, I represent us on the financial services side. I see the city thriving. And, you have these, do you remember the Brexit thing? Yeah, I mean, it was all over Twitter, and it was all sort of doom and gloom. And the idea was that on day one, the city of London would be empty, like some zombie movie, right?
Sure.
There'd be no one in there. Well, that hasn't happened. And I think that if you go back to the start of the conversation, why has that not happened? Because of the fundamental strength of the city of London. So again, if you're another jurisdiction looking to reach financial product,
to poach.
Well, I mean, I'm sure. Look, people can move across borders if they're poached, right? We don't want to stop the functioning of the labour market like that. We can poach too, and I think that the city of London remains fundamentally a very, very attractive place to live and work.
So I was driving at with that line of questioning was, if you're an investor here in the United States and you're looking for opportunities around the world, I think you're saying, and I don't want to put these words in your mouth, you certainly should consider the United Kingdom going forward.
I think,
and if that's the case,
yes.
What distinguishes the United Kingdom from the standpoint of an American investor? Not that you necessarily are in the head of an American investor, but what do you think?
Well, very similar language to begin with.
Law?
We have the rule of law, absolutely. We have common law. But I think what I'd like to get across maybe is to sort of zoom out from London. We're always very, very London-centric when we're discussing these things. Londoner as well, and it's natural. But the United Kingdom's wider economy, what we call the Northern Powerhouse, should be very, very attractive. I mean, places like Leeds, the Midlands, we have financial centres, all sorts of thriving industry and opportunity, particularly in the financial sector, that investors want to look where we're going to put people, where we're going to put offices. They're all waiting to go. The appeal is, if anyone's listening and they want me to come in with some brochures, come in and discuss that. But look, the United Kingdom is the United Kingdom.
Does the United Kingdom have anything comparable to opportunity zones in the United States? So could you?
Yeah, there was a recent announcement that I'm not going to get into too much detail about on free ports. So we're looking into that as well.
What does that mean, free port? What is a free port?
A free is essentially an area on the coastline of any jurisdiction where you come in and operate for a period of time without necessarily immediately paying tariffs or triggering the normal compliance.
In the United States, I've seen several funds launched recently with opportunity zones being the object of their investment activity.
Right.
Just curious, do you see anything?
Well, yeah, I don't want to be facetious, but I think the United Kingdom is one massive opportunity zone.
Oh, okay.
That's my message.
You hit that one out of the park there.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Look, we're very, very friendly to U.S. investors. We know what you guys do. We understand asset management. We understand that this is technology to help people retire, to develop economies. It's part of the social fabric, and we want to have you guys come in. And we have a very, very long tradition of innovation, financial services, more broadly an economy that's able to change and grow, like the labour market. So look, come on in. I mean, we really want to see you guys land in London, and I think it's going to be 10 years of opportunity plus.
So, and I think that's a very good point. Let me ask you something else. One of the advantages I thought of being a member of the European Union was the opportunity to passport between markets.
Mm-hmm.
How does Brexit impact one ability to passport markets? So if you locate in London and you look to do business outside of the United Kingdom, but in the European Union. How does this change that?
So looking into the future, and we are at risk of infringing on the program negotiators, right?
But wasn't the agreement? So, but if you're in Brexit, I'm sorry, if you're in the European Union, you have passporting privileges.
Correct.
If you're outside of the European Union, okay, as it currently stands, you don't have passporting privileges. Is that accurate?
That's more or less accurate. Yeah.
Okay. So I suppose what you may be trying to do is negotiating type of a exception to that rule.
So it would be quite fun for me to get fired on this call today. Quite entertaining, but I'm going to try and...
Okay, I withdraw the question.
No, don't withdraw the question. Look, our position has always been that we want to maximize trade, and that includes capital flows. The EU has, as you know, the equivalent system, and what I think both sides are going to do is try and find the best possible way of...
Let's talk about that for a second. What is that?
Equivalence? Equivalence is essentially a line-by-line level compliance with the jurisdiction's system, slightly different from the sort of substituted compliance UK philosophy, which is a bit more about outcomes.
What else should American investors know about post-Brexit?
Again, I mean, us going full circle here back to the start of our conversation today, and I'll answer that question in a slightly meandering way, if I may.
Please.
Former governor of the Bank of England, he's written a new book called Radical Uncertainty, which is coming out in March. I got my mitts on an advanced copy, and it's excellent, I should say.
Very nice.
Yeah. And with Jay in that book reminds everybody, even in the age of computing and probability and increased ability to do stats, is an unknown frontier. And the unknown frontier is basically that when there are complex changes on the supply economy over time, we know what's going to happen. So that's the reflective universe we were talking about before we came on the call. We're aware of that, and I think that if you play your cards right, there's going to be opportunity, right? And I think if we can get past all the sort of the local media hoo-ha about Brexit, actually this is going to be a very exciting time.
So it reminds me, you said when I was in college, I remember stumbling across a New Yorker. His name was Clarence Strite, and he wrote in the 30s and the 40s and 50s, I think, and he was known for this concept, English Union. He was an early advocate of trying to get the Commonwealth model, apply it to English-speaking nations. And today, we have known as the Five Eyes in intelligence circles, which means that the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, I think that's countries. They're all English-speaking countries, so we have common values and in many respects common cultures. All speak English for the most part. We share intelligence of a sensitive kind, and just curious, did you see ability for that type of developing on the commercial side?
I mean, I think that's straying into science fiction, but
you do? Okay.
I don't know. I can't front run that. I mean, my interest is global trade generally, and as I say, enhancing US-UK trade.
Very good. So, I just want to remind everyone that if you'd like to ask a question, down the screen, your screen on this WebEx, you enter a chat room. We'd love to open up to Q&A from the audience at this point. But in the meantime, let's go back and talk a little bit more, Ed, about frames here.
Okay.
Are you to share with us when you see? So where are we in the timeline? When is this all going to be resolved?
So we're leaving the European Union tomorrow. We're going to start a negotiation with the EU, and I think the significant date is the date that the Prime Minister's made clear, which is that we're going to get this done by December of 2020, which is when the transition period runs out.
Okay. So both agree on the timeline at this point?
I mean, the transition period is it's illegal, right? You can't change that.
Right.
That's hard baked in.
What thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
No, say thank you very much for having me in here today. The message from us is that we're very much interested in U.S. investments. We're keen to talk to you guys. So if anybody does want us to come in for a private briefing at any point, get in touch with Bob or NYR, and we're more than happy to do it.
Yes, and I think on that point, we agree that it is located here in New York, and those of you who would like more information on this topic and others related to trade and matters vis-a-vis the United Kingdom, Ed is a terrific resource and would be very happy to any questions. Go back to that first slide. I don't know if we have your contact information up here, don't we?
You should do. If not, then I'm happy for you guys to distribute that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have it. So
no problem. I'll get that over to you.
What I can do is put it in the chat room.
Sure.
See if I can get in there. Actually,
no problem. Well, we can follow up on that. And Bob, I want to say again, thank you very much for taking today.
Pleasure. And here we go.